I will start this presentation. Thank you very much. So today we're going to be chatting a little bit about our research findings and then more towards this virtual care access toolkit. We call it VCAT, and how we've sort of worked together to sort of put it together and our learning process and our challenges through it. So we will be sharing both the process and outcomes of our research project with you by 1, sharing a video explaining our resources, 2, sharing reflections of some lessons learned, 3, describing our team's ongoing progress, and 4, exploring anticipated future plans.
So although our project took place during the pandemic, as Sophie mentioned, its roots arose from the story of a patient, which spoke to me very strongly. She was an older adult woman who requested to defer a crucial stroke follow-up appointment due to challenges in getting her driveway plowed, finding a volunteer driver, and anticipating fatigue of a long drive to the outpatient clinic in wintry weather. Dr. Apparetti, our PI, at that time was taken aback by her story, and he began to devise a way to alleviate those barriers for her and for other patients, which led to the creation of a virtual follow-up stroke clinic long before COVID-19 became something we talked about every day. So the goal was to improve the experience of virtual care for patients and caregivers. And in our project, this started with meeting with patients and caregivers to learn about their perspectives on virtual care, their concerns or the barriers they felt were present, and their suggestions for addressing challenges in order to make virtual care more successful for them and others. So we'd like to start by welcoming you to watch our team's 4-minute video, some of our reflections about our philosophy and the journey we took to develop this toolkit of virtual care resources.
Okay, thank you, Anne. And please let me know if you guys cannot hear the sound. Anne, can you see the video?
Not yet.
Is it just a black screen?
It's coming.
Okay.
Research is humanistic work. We need patients to be there to remind us that this work is going to affect people. It's going to make changes, and it should make changes in a way that improves people's lives.
We started one of the first virtual clinics with the video visits in the stroke prevention clinic in Kingston. It was quite apparent that patients very much liked the convenience and the comfort of doing video visits from their home, but the healthcare system was not set up to deliver virtual care optimally. Patients and families and caregivers did not have the understanding around how to do virtual care and various aspects of virtual care like privacy, consent, choice. So I decided to engage with patients to see how best we can address this.
Dr. Apparetti came to the Patient Family Advisory Committee, and he wanted to begin follow-up care for stroke using virtual care. So he asked for input, and I put up my hand. We have a number of projects in progress, and the Virtual Care Access Toolkit was the biggest of those projects.
What we came up with was a Virtual Care Access Toolkit, and so that provides education as well as tools that are going to help to empower patients when they go and use virtual care. I think the patient-partnered aspect really brought a unique aspect because we had those patient partners right from the conception of the project. Really being integrated as main players within the project brought a different perspective that we don't often see in research.
The big research piece of our project was to do focus group interviews with patients and caregivers who had used or did not use virtual care. When we have patients that drive the research, or when it's patient-oriented, we have patients that actually help us to identify, hey, this is important. Hey, this should not be missed. And in the end, this is what's going to affect policy. This is what's going to affect changes.
It's been a long time coming that the patient feels that they're part of the process. We have to set up trust. It took the right amount of time for everyone to really feel safe at the table and to feel that their voice or their concerns or their comments had some weight and were appreciated and really helped us understand where we needed to go.
My role was really very much about making sure that the engagement that we were doing was authentic and that we were listening in the way that was meaningful. To work with a team that is so keen to do this well and so committed to doing it right and taking the time to do it right is really exciting to see. What I really liked about this project from the very beginning was that it started very much from the basis of what do patients and families need right now. It's not about just making care virtual for the sake of making sure we get people through the system, but about delivering quality care in a different way.
It was a fantastic experience working with the patients and the patient partners and the patient advisors, as well as the patient-oriented research experts on the teams and other researchers on the team. It was a very humbling experience for me.
I was delighted to be involved as a patient partner and with an equal voice at the table from the very beginning. When you have patient partners involved in that process, you know it's going to be relevant to the people who really need it, to people receiving care. Patient engagement throughout the whole continuum of that process ensures that the end products will be relevant and will be needed in healthcare today.
Are we, and do you see the the PowerPoint?
Yes, the PowerPoint's back on and we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So as we mentioned, the final outcome that we had hoped to achieve through this project was to have some resources for patients and caregivers that were informed by them, co-developed with them, and then reviewed and updated so that all of their feedback was incorporated into them. And we're really pleased with the outcome. We have 3 videos, one called Preparing for a Virtual Appointment, another Privacy, Consent and Choice, and the third Healthcare Conditions that may or may not be appropriate for virtual care. And we decided to design them with the older adult in mind. And that was at the recommendation of the advisory group of patients that we met with, feeling that that was a population that needed tips right away that may not be as familiar with digital techniques with technology and digital literacy. We also created tips for technology checklist for people and a caregiver guide for virtual care.
Sorry about that, Anne.
No, that's good. So one thing that we really enjoyed and purposely started at the very beginning of the project was to document what we learned along the way. We thought our team process would yield interesting lessons learned, which would be beneficial to us beyond the limited scope and time frame of creating this toolkit. And so to do that, a digital team journal was created, and every 2 weeks an automated message was generated that invited us to reflect on what was happening and what we were learning. The guided journal entry encouraged us to categorize our reflections, to share our opinion of whether it was a problem or a success that we were speaking about, and to offer a suggestion for action. We could identify our entries personally, or we could post them anonymously. And we found at the end of this process, the 2 categories that were most often cited as the topics were, not surprisingly, patient-engaged research, but also a category we called random thoughts.
Okay, so today we would like to share with you 3 major lessons that our team learned throughout the research process. The first lesson learned was who is the expert? So working on an interdisciplinary team, we had a team of patient partners, we had researchers, we had clinicians, and then we also had hospital staff doing a variety of different roles. And then also us coming from a variety of different backgrounds and educational backgrounds, but also our values were different and so on and so forth. we've come to learn that making the medical and patient voices equals is not just a process, but it is a necessary and transformative experience. It must be part of sort of your research dynamics. It's not just a matter of you have to do it, but it is naturally transformative. And there's this idea often that the researcher or the doctor or the clinician is the expert, but they're really just experts in very particular things. And this is why also patients have historically been falling through the cracks, because we often don't see things in the viewpoint of the patients. As patients have a wide range of professional skills which they bring to the research table, the significance of recognizing, respecting, and learning from lived experience cannot be understated. From co-creating our tools and website to co-creating academic material, such as the article that's featured in this book journal club chat, equalizing the patient research and medical voice is essential to creating knowledge in a way that is not only accessible to all, but in a way that's relatable to all, so that people who are not researchers can see themselves actually reflected in the material and see themselves actually using it. As virtual care is an area that is shared by different people with different experiences, research in this area largely benefits from recognizing that there are multiple forms of expertise. The second lesson learned is that open communication is key. So working as an interdisciplinary team from different backgrounds, cultures, even ages, that was an interesting dynamic. Like our ages, we were, across the spectrum. We each brought with us a different set of expectations and assumptions regarding authorship on this presentation and an academic paper, which, you can take a look at through the QR code here. The patient partners on our project raised the comments that the lead researcher on the project, so Dr. Ramana Apparetti, who is the PI of this project, should be the second author so that they could be easily visible. But from an academic perspective, it's often known that the first author and the last author are actually the most important sort of positions on a paper. And it's a really sort of small example, but it just goes to show that we actually had very, very different assumptions, and it wasn't known until it was communicated. And then once it was communicated, we kind of realized that we were actually all on the same page. We really wanted the lead researcher, the PI, to have the credit that they deserved. But it's not, I don't want to say things like it's common sense. Communication is absolutely key in working on an interdisciplinary team, and also when working on patient-oriented research. And then lastly, we sort of talked about scope creep being a huge challenge, and this comic strip really, really does a good job encapsulating what we felt. Sometimes it felt like there was an end to the project, and this quote in blue, is something that we actually drew from one of our lessons learned. We began the project with an open iterative engagement process to identify gaps and needs in virtual care delivery. However, working virtually was sometimes, if not often, a barrier, as it wasn't always conducive to organic discussion or to working closely, or even to hash out a conflict. It's actually really hard to do so over a Zoom call. And further, as the project progressed, we realized that it was important to develop a solid work plan with agreed upon deliverables, clear outcomes, and a mission statement. So project management was absolutely, I think, a key factor oftentimes in research projects that we don't think about. And we realized that although we had a lot of great ideas, some of them should be tabled for future consideration to maintain a defined scope. And believe it or not, this was something that actually took us like over a year to figure out. I would say it was turbulent, but it was necessary. And then, as I said in the first point, it was really transformative. I think our team is much closer. I think our team is often now sort of on the same wavelength. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. Even I'm just thinking back just to a few weeks ago when Anne and I were trying to put together this presentation. and we were both sort of like sort of feeling gray and not feeling good, and we both sort of came together and decided, it's okay if this is a pretty informal chat, and just to get to that point in which we are on the same wavelength, we're seeing things the same, actually took a lot of work, I think, over the years. But yeah, as I said, it's a really beautiful thing to have a working partnership. Moving to the next one.
And so you're getting the flavor, I hope, from, if you've read the article, if you've had time to do that, and from what Sophie and I are sharing today, that the process was pretty complex in many ways. We had patients and caregivers who were participants in the study. We had a patient and caregiver advisory group from that larger group. And then we had our own little research group, which had patient partners. So there are many ways that we really thought about and worked through patient engagement in this project. So traveling with a patient advisory group was a big part of the journey, and patients and caregivers participated in a series of virtual focus groups that were facilitated by Sophie and me, or Sophie and Lisa, depending on the time frame. And they resulted in themes that were used to inform the content of our toolkit. A patient advisory group emerged from these sessions, and members reviewed iterations of the toolkit all along the way. Examples of their feedback comments are shared in the next slide, I think, or are they here? Maybe they're in a click coming up.
I don't think so. Sorry, I might have.
Okay. Okay.
Apologies.
That's okay. We did have a lot of feedback from the patient partners, I will say that, about developing the toolkit. And recruiting virtually, we realized, was very time consuming, more so than we had expected. And it felt somewhat impersonal, though it did allow us to include people from other parts of Canada. And you'll see that many of our participants were from British Columbia. I have to say, I loved meeting our patient participants and patient partners. I identified with many of their perspectives on virtual care and with the role they had as patient partners. It felt like they were my people, and their feedback shaped all of the resources and enabled the research team to have confidence in the outcomes.
And I just wanted to touch really quickly on the recruiting virtually was actually a challenge, and it was sort of unprecedented at the time. Not that virtual recruitment is sort of completely new, but this idea that the dynamics of the recruitment was not really, I don't want to say not really well thought out, but it became apparent it would not work afterwards. In our paper, we disclosed that we actually talked to a lot of community agencies. We talked to like 30 plus organizations and agencies in our actual region, and we had really, really low uptake. Part of the reason for that was that we actually created a poster, and then I began to realize that our poster was put up in the clinic spaces and in the spaces of sort of the health centers, but during COVID, nobody was able to go inside those spaces. So even though the poster was put up, it was not seen. And it seems like a, oh, duh, of course moment. But actually, this was another one of our learning experiences on recruitment. And I've actually had people even contact me a year later saying they're interested in seeing the study, because with time people were really going back to sort of in-person care. But yeah, that's one example of a recruitment challenges. Returning to our third point about not having an established set of deliverables, we really struggle to engage the patient advisory group in meaningful ways sometimes, because us as the research group, we didn't have a clear path forward. There was a lot of scope creep. And as members of the advisory group was situated across different time zones, like us mostly being in Ontario and many of the group members being in British Columbia, we had difficulty engaging the advisory group in a consistent manner through virtual means. And we are keeping these successes and challenges in mind as we move forward with our ongoing progress and future plans.
So we wanted to give you a glimpse of our toolkit. It became publicly accessible last year. And since then, we have continued to update and refine the website. We've tried to make it more user-friendly and accessible. We formulated an awareness strategy for sharing the toolkit and getting it out there. We've contributed to an education module for healthcare providers using virtual care. And we plan to add that to our website when it's available. And lastly, we've had our videos translated into additional languages. So the languages we chose to start with reflect the 5 most spoken languages in Canada, which are English, French, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Punjabi, which you'll see here. We plan to add additional languages as funding permits. And on the point of funding, it's important, if you visit our website, and I hope you do, to realize that some of our work has been stalled and we're waiting for more funding opportunities. So we also developed postcards that could be downloaded, and our videos can be downloaded, but not all of our work is reflected in the website currently. It's undergoing continued revisions. So we hope to make that stronger, bigger, and better. And our team is determined to keep working together. On a note, off script rather, thinking about our team dynamics, I think it was really important that we recognized we had team building opportunities all through the time that we were together. And because that was in the course of 2 or 3 years, many things happened. I had surgery, Sophie got married, Veronica had a baby, and all through this, Lisa and Ramana were working full time and being called away to certain other projects of priority. Ramana had a sabbatical and went to India. Angela was working at the same time in the hospital, and so she was able to come and go at different time periods. And we really took those opportunities as times for team building. We did have a few times when we met in person. We had an outdoor lunch when the COVID permitted. We even had a couple of inside opportunities to socialize when there was a lull in transmission and it was safe to do that. And I really think this built the trust and the relationships between all of us. I would say from my point of view, this is a team that I trust in innately. I know each person well enough to feel comfortable in raising issues, in disagreeing, in saying, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm confused. And I hope that flavor comes through in the paper and in our discussion today. So I just wanted to add that tidbit.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that. I also wanted to speak something along that line, but you kind of already said it. Yeah. So another huge change for me was that throughout this project, I actually ended up switching to another workplace. I now work with another fantastic team, but that has been really interesting because prior to that, I was working on this project almost at a full-time basis, supporting this project as a researcher, as a coordinator, what have you, and then switching more to like a supportive role, I think, yeah, probably impacted this project. My current workplace is very supportive, of course, but it does, really impact the sort of capacity that you have to do stuff. But also echoing, yeah, what Anne said, I also have a great deal of trust in this team. And it's also because of that, I think, even though we've sort of moved on to do different things or to different stages in our life, we still hold on, I think, each one of us, like, very dearly to this project. We want to see it move forward. So some of the future plans that we have is facilitating uptake by organizations and services in our region. Keep in mind it is quite stalled at the moment, but this is the plan. We're hoping that there would be more people, particularly in our region, who would be exposed to sort of our toolkit and some of the materials in there. We want to create sort of specific materials that tailor to specific patient populations. So, for example, we've seen that virtual care is largely successful for mental health care providers. And lastly, we want to work on evaluating our toolkit based off of validated measures, tailoring our content based off of the results, and continually engaging our patient partners on how to improve the toolkit. So we would like to thank you all for listening to our presentation. You can find our contact information here on this presentation. We would like to thank the research team and the patient advisory group that comprises the virtual health research group, as well as our partners for supporting this project. We have some references here, but I guess before we open it up to the Q&A session, and I was just, and this is impromptu, so you can say no, but Lisa, I'm wondering, and Lisa is someone who has been a really instrumental part on this research project, and to say that, I want to say that everybody poured out their heart and soul into this research project, and it wasn't just Anna and I, or just I, or whatever. So I'm wondering, Lisa, did you want to say something or reflect on sort of your experiences? And sorry, I know I'm throwing you under the bus, so if you don't want to say no.
No, that's okay. So my role actually was more to sort of mentor the research group, sort of the liaison between the researchers and the patient partners. I did do the masterclass with SPORE several years ago. And so I'm currently in a research administrative role, but I used to be as a coordinator in clinical trials. So I really missed that contact with the patient partner, any patients. Like, I just really missed that clinic and that touch point with patients. So this was a perfect thing for me to sort of get back to that, but also to grow the awareness of really genuine and proper engagement with patients for research, how to do it right. So, I think I learned the most by actually doing. And I think that was it. We can take the courses, you can provide the resources, you can do the reading and workshops, but I think actually doing it has really opened up my eyes to the work that's involved. There's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to do it right, but it is so rewarding. I think we all felt not that we just learned something from it, but that we've actually, there's value in what we did for everyone involved.
Is Raman